right. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I would like to greet all of you in the greeting words of peace. We say it in the Arabic language of Assalamu alaikum, but it is a prayer of peace be unto you. And welcome once again to Knowledge for Life's Knowledge Cipher, where we deal with mental health and wellness issues that impact our community. And today we're talking definitely about a mental health issue because we're talking about integration, assimilation, segregation, and separation. And so, what path should we go down, brothers and sisters? I mean, when we look at the climate that we're living in today, we have hard choices to make. And the choice that we make is either going to spell our survival or it's going to spell our doom. And I think that we have an excellent guest on today who's going to help us to clear up some of these issues. So I'm going to go ahead and bring my sister on. I've had her on before, Sister Lorraine Muhammad, and she wrote this excellent book, Black Integration, a Failed Social Experiment. And greetings, sister. Assalamu alaikum, Ramadan Mubarak, and happy Savior's Day.
And I return all greetings to you. Assalamu alaikum, Ramadan Mubarak, and may Allah continue to bless each and every one of us in our endeavors.
Absolutely. And so, thank you once again, sister, for coming on and discussing this timely topic of integration, separation, segregation, and separation. And can you tell us first a little bit about this wonderful book that you wrote? And we'll get right on into the topic.
Yes, sir. I wrote the book because the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that integration would not work. And I remember reading that when I was a college student, and it always stuck with me. So when I decided I would write a book, I decided to investigate whether the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's statement was correct. So I used national statistics for the book, and I took a look at how we were faring nationally. So we can make a determination based on not emotion, but based on actual facts. As a child of the 60s, I hate to admit, don't tell nobody, I remember them singing We Shall Overcome. And I never liked the song because the emphasis was on someday.
Right.
And here we are 60 years later, and they want us to continue saying we should overcome someday. But 60 years is a long time. That meant childhood, my children becoming grown, and now grandchildren. So at which point are we going to evolve to the point that we can be self-sufficient to ensure the future for our children? Because as we see now, there's conflict and divided house cannot stand.
Right.
Well, we have them, they're literally fighting online. And the constant battles that they're waging, they affect us because we are dependent on them. But if we can remove ourselves from being as dependent on them as we are currently, we can survive. And basically, the goal in life for every creature is survival. If you're running around trying to kill something in your house, whether it's a fly, a spider, it's trying to survive.
Right.
So we should be thinking about what we can do to ensure our survival. As long as we are dependent on their institutions, which they never helped us because it's a hostile environment. You can't live in a hostile environment and not incur some damage. So that's one of the things that we are dealing with.
Right.
So every institution we go into, it's a struggle. From school, from the point that we entered, actually not even school, from the time we're born to the time we die, it's a struggle. And that's basically because of living in such a hostile environment. They did a study where they were saying the Africans that came in from the continent had regular blood pressure when they entered the country. 6 months later, they had high blood pressure.
Right. Right. Absolutely. So let's look at some of this. So first, let's look at these terms. Can we let's go ahead and first look at segregation. Can you help us to understand what segregation is?
Segregation is when you're living separately from another group, but they still have control over your everyday life.
Mm,
We're actually still living under segregation right now. New York State is one of the most segregated states in the country. So when people think segregation, they think down south, but actually, segregation is all over the country.
right, absolutely. And I wanted to add to that that when we look at segregation, it is also colonization. Even though we think of Africa as being colonized, really, our community is colonized. And that is where resources are taken out and nothing is ever put back in. And that is what we look at when we look at the Black community here in America. They siphon all of our talent up out of our community, and they have this what they call cultural appropriation,
Hmm.
where we see in their commercials where they use our beats, they use our slang, but we we don't get any credit for it, nor do we get paid for it, not properly. When you think about them giving out these contracts, music contracts, but the music industry makes hand over fist. And so we'll get a little bit more into that. Let's look now at integration, because a lot of us, and there's two terms, there's integration, and then there's another, which is called assimilation. But can you talk about integration and assimilation and what the difference might be?
Assimilation is something that we can never accomplish. Assimilation is really for Europeans that come to this country. The first generation may not speak English. The second generation goes to school, learns English, and they can move around the society because they're Caucasian. But Black people who have been here for 470 years, we would never be able to assimilate because as soon as they see you, they know that you're Black. Doesn't matter whether you're Christian, Muslim, Jew. Doesn't matter if you came from Africa. It doesn't matter if directly. I mean, in the recent history, it doesn't matter if you're in the Caribbean. They see you, they know you're Black,
Hmm.
and so you can never actually assimilate into this culture. They will give you some easement if you're generating income for them.
Hmm.
So if you're in the NFL, NBA, you're singing and dancing, and you're generating income for them, then they'll make some allowances for you. But for the most part, we are in a segregated society. America is a colony because you got to remember they moved into this country and they never left. So
Right.
they're actually a big colony. And so everyone who's here is basically being controlled by the elites of this country.
Hmm. Absolutely. And so when we go into this other last term here, which is the one that I like, separation.
Well,
Can, can you talk a little bit about separation, and then we'll go into, which one should we choose, moving forward to maximize our survival as a people? Can you talk a little bit about separation?
yes. In order for us to achieve what we call self determination or sovereignty, we must separate. We've been here for 470 years, and during that time, we went from slavery to Jim Crow to mass incarceration. That's currently what's going on now. And
Mm,
because they're so hostile to our existence, they give us diseases,
mm,
they control everything that we are doing. And even the only reason why they permit us to stay here at this time is because we're generating income. But they only want those people who are generating income. The people who are not generating income, which they call useless eaters,
mhm.
they have no use for, and therefore they have to figure out how to eliminate us. So that's where the diseases come in, the wars come in, the disease, war, and also the medication that they're giving us.
Right.
All of these things contribute to our untimely death. The
Mm,
horrible food that they're permitting to come into our neighborhoods. All of these things are resulting in our untimely death. Plus the fact that we're following them culturally, so we're eating too much, eating the wrong foods, and those things are also causing us to die. Most of us
right.
can't even make it to 70,
Mm,
and that's really sad. But and the lifestyle choices that we're making, so we have to decide whether we want to live or whether we want to die. And then based on this decision of life or death, you choose your path. But you can see what's going on in America can't last forever. They're constantly arguing. And anytime you have someone who's arguing constantly, it's just a
Right.
matter of time before it comes to blows. If somebody doesn't step in and intervene to ensure that it doesn't become a military situation, it's going to become a military situation.
Hmm.
So we have to decide, do you want to be involved or do you want to stay over to the side? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us to stay out of it. That was our instruction. So we have to convince our people to stay out of it. They're supposed to be doing a march on April 5th, and I'm looking online, and a lot of the people are saying that they're not trying to be involved in that. They feel as though it's not in our best interest.
Right. Absolutely. And I had this discussion with some young people who, have the fire in them, are ready to go out and do whatever it takes to get us free. And what I continue to tell them is what you want to do is you want to shelter in place. You don't need to go out there and you don't need to go out there and do nothing. You know what
Mhm.
I'm saying? Because what we're looking at right now is, as the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said, the unraveling. We're looking at the unraveling in real time,
Yes, sir.
and so we're looking at what the scripture says. If Satan be against Satan, how can his kingdom stand? So we're looking at full-blown revolution and civil unrest breaking out in the street. And so once again, going to the scripture, it says in the scripture to go inside, paint the lamb's blood of life over your doorposts, which the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan only told us that that's the restrictive laws, which
Hmm.
is our success at any time. So that definitely is good advice to just get out the way. Um, let's go into some of the things that you talk about in your book. And the one that I always like to look at is the canary, what I would call the canary in the coal mine, which is uh, maternal and infant mortality rates among Black women who are here in America. We uh, read in some situations is worse than certain countries in Africa, which, you know, here we are supposedly in the best medical industrialized country on the planet. And yet we have Black women who are dying in childbirth, a natural process.
Yes, sir. But that's due. I looked at that particular statistic through the eye of depopulation.
Mm,
We have to remember that if a woman dies in her childbirth, that prevents her from having future children.
hmm.
And a lot of times you listen to what people are saying, but we don't really think they're going to do what they say. But let's think about this. How many years they've been saying that we're living too long? How
Right.
many years I've been hearing them say this? They're living too long. They're living too long. So that means if they're saying it, there's an agenda that's going on with they're saying they're not telling you there's an agenda. They're just saying you're living too long. But obviously they have a plan to eliminate the group that they perceive to be living too long. I remember when I was attending college and Maya Kahana came to the college and he said, we have to kill the Palestinians. This is
Mm,
like in the early 80s. He said, we have to kill them. And you would go, huh? But his logic was the women, the Palestinian women, were having out birthing them. They were
hmm.
having, I think, 5 or 7 children, and the other women, the colonizers, women were only having about 1.5, somewhere in there. It was very low. So this is something that was said in the 80s. But
Mm,
then when you look and you see what's going on there now, most of the casualties of war are women and children. So
right.
anytime you're killing a woman, you're killing her ability to reproduce for future generations. And that's a similar. So when you're looking at the mortality rate of Black women in this country, that's basically what's going on. And with the COVID shot, it's worse. The
Mm,
women that get the COVID shot are having difficulty having babies, having live births. So they really have curtailed a lot of people's childbearing ability. So while they were running, when Trump was running for election, they were offering IVF. So who are they offering the IVF to? Because they are screaming on one instance abortion and the other instance IVF. So who's the IVF going to? Because back in the day when I was having children, IVF was very expensive and you could not get an insurance company pay for it. Trump was telling them, oh, we'll let them pay for it because they want their children, more children to be birthed who are Caucasian. So we have to look at everything that's done through the view of population. So
Right.
you want to get rid of the Cubans, the Haitians. These are all just titles and labels they gave us. These are black people. The Cubans, the Haitians, the ones from Venezuela, they want to put them out of the country, but they want to let in the South Africans and the Ukrainians.
Mm-hmm.
And the Canadians cross the border regularly.
Right.
So they're letting you know one population we're not in favor of, and the other one we're in favor of. So those of us who are physically here, we have to now think of how does that affect us? Because they're obviously fighting. It's just a matter of when the guns start coming out and they start shooting at each other. So how are we going to survive in this hostile environment if we're disunited? See, our diversity should be diversity of all black people taken in the African, the black person from the Caribbean who doesn't speak English. It doesn't matter where the boat landed. It matters where the boat left.
Mm-hmm.
We are one nation. We have to function as one nation, and we have to understand it's in our best interest. The Carter administration said one of the things that they implemented, they wanted to ensure that we never united as a group. They did not see the benefit for them of the unity of Africans, Caribbean blacks, and blacks here. Because that's right there, that's trade, that's commerce. If you
Mm-hmm.
have these three groups functioning as one unit, we can't focus on one sister happens to speak Portuguese and another one speaks Italian and the other one speaks German. That's the colonizers' language. We have
Right.
to think about what is in the best interest of the group, focus on group dynamics, and stop worrying about this nitpicking. Because if you're going to sit there and picnic, everything that we're doing is the mentality of the Berlin Conference.
Mm-hmm.
In order for us to survive, we have to put the Berlin Conference to the side. We have to open up the borders. We have to decide we're going to trade with this group and that group and how we're going to get what we need because now they're talking about eliminating SNAP and at the same time eliminating food banks. There are people who are depending on those things in order to eat. Now, one of the things they did not factor in is that so many white people are also impoverished and use these programs. They're fighting, they're realizing, oh, we didn't realize, because see, we've always been the face of social services, but they're really on these services more than we are because they've always discouraged us from getting certain programs. And
Right.
so now your people are on these programs, but when you're thinking DEI, you're thinking black people. But when I seen the protests, the DEI people were white.
Right.
And so they're now the poor white and the wealthier white are going to start having conflict because you're saying those food stamps, but they're on food stamps.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to just think about our group and how make sure our group survives because
Yeah.
while they're fighting, starvation will enter the land. Most famines are a result of not lack of food, but the conflict. Everybody's fighting, nobody's
Mm-hmm.
growing produce. So we have to look at all of these things and all of these factors that we see going on abroad and see how we can ensure that no matter what comes to our shores, we're able to survive.
Absolutely. And I mean, you touched on so much. You touched on so much, and so let's just ride off of some of what you have brought up. So Bernie Sanders and what it was AOC,
Hmm.
um, they just went on a tour. I think it was called something about oligarchy.
Hmm.
And for those who may not know, the oligarchs are those who are in power who are the wealthy class. And
Hmm.
so, not only do we see a ramp up of racism and white supremacy, but we see a ramp up of classism and sexism. Both of these, all of these are occurring at the same time. And so like the late great Neely Fuller Jr. said that if you don't understand white supremacy, everything else will confuse you. And so this is what we're basically looking at. And so when you talk about the mentality of these whites who are just as poor as black people, one of the things that even during the Great Depression that made them feel somehow better is because they were white, even though they were dirt poor. It don't they look, white supremacy is a mental disorder. You know what I'm saying? So one of the things I want to put this book up here. So I wrote this book, and I would advise everyone to go on to Amazon and get this book. It's
Mhm.
called The Inescapable Famine, and it talks about all of the things that are being brought about today on America that's causing famine. You know, we
Mhm.
look at the we look at history and we see one thing or another causing famine, but all of the situations that we've seen in the past are coming on America today. And so we definitely need to prepare as a people for what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said it will be the worst famine in human history. Um, but let's go ahead and get into a few more topics. And I just wanted to also touch on the fact that even though we're talking about infant and maternal mortality rates, we're also talking about a low sperm rate because you had just talked about population control. And this low sperm rate we know is from all of these chemicals that are in the food, in the water. We're talking about bisphenol A, phthalates, and a number of other what they call hormone inhibitors
Mhm.
that the survival guide being the how to eat to live will help us to avoid all of these chemical castration that
Mhm.
we see going on here in America. Let's go ahead and get into this education because we see we see the what is it, what is it, DEI?
DEI.
We, we see that pushback and we see really white society being terrified of facing the truth of what they have done, and we see the attack on DEI, we see the attack on critical race theory, we see the attack just basically on Black history. Can you talk a little bit about how integration has affected uh, educating our children?
Well, one of the things that integration did do, it did permit us to enter in colleges and universities that we would not be able to enter into, previous to the civil rights movement. So a lot of our children, and as well as my generation as well, were able to go into these colleges and universities. So that was the good part of it. But you have to partner that education with the knowledge of who you are.
Mm,
See, that's the missing ingredient with their schools. They get you in there and they teach you all that they've done. And they teach you none of what you have done.
mm,
See, and we are the original people, and we existed prior to there even being a thought. We need to know where we figure in that. So that's
mm,
one of the blessings of having the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, because now you're taking that information that you learned in school and you're pairing it with the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But if you just go to school and you don't have anyone to instruct you on knowledge of self, you end up
right.
working for the very people who are oppressing you.
Hmm.
And so we don't want our children to, because first of all, the society is only going to last for so long. You can see, even a blind man can see that America is going down.
Right.
And so, really, it's the knowledge of self that keeps you balanced, that keeps you sane, that keeps you knowing that they know that their civilization is on the implosion side of the equation. They want to take us with them, and they want to make sure that we don't have a future because we're following what they're doing. So, as
Hmm.
two giants are fighting, the DNC and the RNC, or the
Right.
DNC and the GOP, same difference.
Same
Um,
difference.
we don't have what this ain't we don't got a dog in that fight. If that's what they want to do, a divided house will implode. So now we have to focus on what we're going to do. It's all about survival. We have lived with these people 470 years. They've never meant us no good. They don't mean us no good right now. And they know, because see, they know scripture better than we know scripture.
Mm-hmm.
They've deceived us in the churches that they control and taught us scripture based on their desire to maintain us as slaves. But they always knew that the slave was going to end up being the first. The last was going to be the first, and the first was going to be the last. So they've always prepared for that. That's why they know that we're the majority numerically. So now they're trying to run this country as the South Africans were running South Africa. So they want to be a minority ruled country. So even if we're the majority, they still want to control us. That can only happen if we're willing to be controlled and we don't have a new mindset. That new mindset is the. And so as long as we are holding on to them, which is what I always discuss Stockholm syndrome, we will never be sane. Because
touch a little bit on that Stockholm syndrome for people who may not know.
Stockholm syndrome is when someone kidnaps you and holds you captive. They said you can have Stockholm syndrome within a couple of weeks. It's like a defense mechanism to ensure your survival. You know this person has you. They can do whatever they wanted to you. So what you do is you try to make them happy to ensure your survival.
Mm-hmm.
So if this can happen within a few weeks, what happens to people that have been kidnapped for 470 years?
Right.
What do you think about yourself? You actually take on the mindset of the people who kidnapped you. That's why you can go around calling each other the N-word and don't blink up nothing about it. This is the reason why we're running around trying to join the armed forces to fight another country. And these people have done nothing to us. That's why that brother he was in Florida and he ended up going to the military, and he's in Niger, getting killed by a black man, because you're a black man over in Niger. You know nothing about American foreign policy, but you're over there willing to fight and die for the very people that kidnapped your people and brought them here and held them in captivity all of this time. But our people who have Stockholm syndrome don't even teach their children. My children used to get those little flyers as soon as they get to high school, they would get those military things in the mail, and I would hand it to them and say, "What are you supposed to do with that?" And they would rip them up and throw them in the trash. Because mama said, we don't do that. You want to join the military? FOI.
That's right.
We're not doing that fight for the very people who have held us here for 470 years, giving us the worst treatment known to man. Who does that? But if you don't have the right thought in your mind, and they've taught you to love them and hate yourself, you're willing to do anything to satisfy your captor, and very little to maintain your own life. That's what we're witnessing every day. That's why we can go in the street and kill each other, because they killed us. We can mistreat each other because they mistreated us. So every ill that they passed on to us during slavery, we're now doing it to each other. So now they don't have to come into our communities and mistreat us, because we're doing it to each other. And that's based on the idea that we are nothing. We have no value unless white people tell us we have value. So when they call us to the military, white men said we have value, so now we can go to the military. Master said we have value, we can go to the polls and vote for somebody who has no interest in us. Only every 4 years they come into our community and get our vote. And you ask them, what Janet Jackson said, "What have you done for me lately? What have you ever done for me?" There's no reason for me to waste gas to go across town to vote for anybody who does nothing. Not only do you do nothing for me, you're plotting my actual demise. It was the Democratic Party that made sure we ended up in jail after the GOP sold us drugs. So when the GOP sold us drugs, crack, it's a documented fact, then the DNC ensured that we would spend 25 years to life. So how many can them brothers have babies 25 years to life? Depopulation.
Yeah. I wanted to touch on that crack real quick too, because I helped a young lady, Sister Shondell Ackerson, and she is a survival a survivor, excuse me, of the foster care system. And a lot of our children went into the foster care system because of this wicked demon putting crack into our communities, destroying the Black family, which we know has always been the agenda of the American, of the architecture of white supremacy. Because when you have a strong family, you have a strong community. When you have a strong community, you have a strong nation. And so we know that the modus operandi, if you will, has always been the destruction of the Black family. And that has taken place in America over a number of different ways. You know, one of the things that we have to even look at is the government policy of the welfare of the projects,
Mhm.
where the Black, can you imagine? They wrote it to where the Black man could not be in the home with his family. Now, you tell me where in the scripture does it say that it is permissible to destroy families? In the Bible, we know that family was so sacred
Mhm.
that anything that went against family was punishable by death.
Mhm.
And so, but go ahead and talk on that, because I think, the family, when we look at the family, integration has done a lot to destroy our families, because before integration, they said that we had something like 70% of our homes were what you would call a traditional family, a man, a woman, a child. But today it has reversed, and it's trending towards worse than 70% single headed household. Can you talk a little bit about that and integration?
Well, one of the things they did, they took all of the factory jobs and they shipped those abroad. And many of our family members worked in factories during that time. I think after the civil rights riots, they decided they didn't want the factories here because they were
Mm,
depending on us to work those factories. And during that particular upheaval, they decided they would ship all of the factory jobs out of the country. So most of your factory jobs left. So many people lost jobs then, and then they don't educate us to do anything else. So if you're giving someone an eighth grade education with the anticipation they will work in a factory, but there's no
mm.
factory. So what does that person do now? So that's when you bring in the drugs and you have them be selling drugs for you. And then when they get caught, you stick them in jail, and now they have all the jobs they want now because all of the major companies are now operating out of the prison system.
The
So now
prison industrial
you have
complex.
you have all of these men in jail. They have their children and wives at home. Then you have the other brothers who are going into the military because that's the only job they can find. They're not always able to bring their spouses with them. So all of these systems that they set up is to ensure that our families are destroyed. Then you have the other group that's talking about, I don't need no man.
Mm,
Okay. I
right.
ain't gonna get into that psyche, but how are you gonna have children without a man? How see when you don't have a man in your household, that ensures your children are going to be high school dropouts.
Mm,
You're going to be impoverished because most of the time the man is making the most money if the man is working and functioning. So all these little schemes that they give you, this little like Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, we ain't got no business in no women's lib movement.
right.
It's not for us, that's for them. They were dealing with their man and the
Hmm.
situation that their man, they always had us working, even when we didn't want to work. I was reading an article and they were saying when the brothers went to war, I think it was World War II, or it might have been one, and they were in the military, they were getting a stipend and they were sending the stipend home to their wives. So the women didn't have to work anymore. They were staying home and taking care of their families. They made it a law that they had to work, even if
Mm,
they didn't want to, even
mm,
if they didn't need to, because the Caucasian women did not want to clean their own homes and take care of their own children. So they always made us work. And that was one of the things that when we wanted to get public assistance, and we might have been legitimately eligible for public assistance, they would say, if there's something to be cleaned, something to be picked, you can't sit home. But the white
right.
women were committed to stay home because really welfare was set up for them. And so they were permitted to stay home under widow benefits, I believe. And their husband can actually be there too. And they can have their whole family intact and still get a check. But with
Right.
us, they always wanted to destroy our family life because that's the strength of our community is our tight family life. So they've always, it's not a, it's not an accident they would send your cousin to Cuba and your mama went to Puerto Rico and you might end up in Brazil. They had no problem with separating our families because that is the strength and the foundation that we've always built our lives on. God, family, nation.
Right. And if I can interject, one of the things that our people may not have know is that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught about 64 years hidden history. We were taught that we were brought here in 1619, but the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that we were brought here in 1555. And there's 64-year hidden history. So what happened in that 64-year hidden history? We're told that, brothers and sisters, that the white man literally separated us as children from our parents so that we would be so detached from our history, robbed of our name, robbed of our language. And these are all sciences.
Mhm,
What is in the name? The Bible asks, what's in a name?
mhm,
The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan says that a name gives us the nature and the function of a thing. So when
mhm,
you name a black man a Negro,
mhm,
you just, man, these people are so wicked. And
mhm,
so, what about the English language? I remember hearing Martin Luther King talking about how, in the English language, subconsciously, everything that's black is negative and everything that's white is positive. So, I'll blackball you, I'll blackmail you.
mhm,
Black cat is a bad omen.
mhm,
Um, you wear black to funerals and white to
mhm.
weddings, and angel food cake is
Yes,
white, and the devil. Come on, man. I
yes.
mean, what is it that we as a people need to understand that we're living among open enemies? They don't hide it. And today, as the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in Savior's Day talked about the mask or the peeling of the onion, uh,
Mhm.
and
Ability.
they're showing their true nature
Yes.
as a people. Go right ahead into what you were saying.
And that's why I didn't understand too much how we got so involved in this women's march. I understood it on some level, but I
Yeah,
understood too. And I said to them on Twitter, they will use you and toss you aside because that's what they've always done.
happens
They
all the
just need
time.
somebody to help them to organize that thing. Once they got that baby up and going, they're going to kick you to the curb.
That's right.
And that's basically what I witnessed. I said, and I was like, because they have their agenda, we have our agenda. If you're so concerned about the oppression of Black people, then speak to your uncle, your father, your grandfather, your brothers, because those are the ones who are oppressing us. So for you to now expect me to help you with your cause, which is not in the same cause that I'm having. See, because the bottom line is it's a group oppression of us. They're
Mhm.
all of them are oppressing us. It's not just people focus on the men, but the women are the ones who teach their children. And what are you teaching your children that your 10-year-olds are just as racist as the 80-year-old?
Mhm.
This is being taught at home. We transfer the tradition of the home as women. The men are usually working and doing what they're doing. The women are home, the ones of us who can afford to stay home. We're the ones who are transferring that information from generation to generation. So white supremacy is being taught from generation to generation. And for
Mhm.
us to neglect our job and pretending as though we free when we're not, and not teaching our children history leaves them in a very bad position.
That's right. We
So we're
should not we should not allow, as parents, and as a community for our children, even if they don't teach it in school, we should form some way of teaching our children the not only the we should teach them the bad parts too. We
Yes.
should definitely teach them what happened during slavery so that we, like the Jews, can say we'll never forgive and we'll never forget. But we should also teach how we have been able to overcome every obstacle in our path. And this is being done while we have been robbed of the knowledge of self. So think of what we'll be like when we come back and regain that knowledge of self. And of course, that regaining of knowledge of self will produce in us a love for self, a love for that black man and that black woman and those black children. Because today, I hate to say it, sister, but I hear a lot of our elders who talk so disparagingly about our young people that it's outright disgusting. And we know that the young people are to some degree wilding out, if you will.
Hmm.
However, we read where it asks the question or where it makes a statement that you can tell a tree by the fruit it bears. So if the children are the way that they are, then we have to look at ourselves as elders and not so much look at the fruit that was produced from the tree of the black community.
That is absolutely true. But also, we have to understand that there are other. Uh, I always tell people, you are not the only influence in your child's life. You would
Absolutely.
like to be the only
Go ahead.
influence in your child's life, but we have a broader community that also impacts our children. They have to make decisions as to which road they're going to take. Are you going to go right? Or are you going to go left? That's their decision for them to make. Now, hopefully, when they learn what's going on, they'll remove themselves from it. But
Right.
also, we got to remember the reason why so many black elders are not happy with our children because our children are not accepting the enslavement that
Hmm.
they were willing to accept.
Right.
They're not running into the church. They're not running into the schools. They're not running into the institutions that shape and mold good slaves.
Hmm.
So our children desire to be free. And one of the things that happened during COVID when they were giving all of that money to a lot of these young people who had jobs and who were getting money, they
Right.
became entrepreneurs. A lot of them went into business for themselves. A lot of them did things that a lot of older people would have never dreamt of. We'd have been trying to hold it down until we got back to work.
Hmm.
These children was like, "Oh, I always wanted to do this. I'm going to do this now." And so our children have a different mindset than we do,
Yes.
especially if we're good slaves. I'm just keeping it real. Some of us are very good. I'm a rebel with a cause.
You
So
see, that's what I'm talking about, though, sister, is that, even though we might be older, right? We
mhm,
we we got that we have that Joshua generation. We do. It's not
mhm,
just the young people who have it.
yeah,
There are some older people who have that Joshua generational type of mentality.
yes.
And I think that, this is why the Nation of Islam and other groups who are nationalistic in their thinking, this is why they're a threat. It's
Mhm,
because, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, he talked about three classes of people that hinder us, if you will, right? Or gatekeepers: the
mhm,
preacher,
mhm,
the politician, and the educator.
mhm,
And when we look at, our situation today, we don't have really any type of representation in government, and yet we spend so much time, so much energy. I remember Brother Umar Johnson.
mhm,
Uh, of course, he doesn't go by Umar anymore, but our brother was talking about. Think about it: if we would divert that energy that we put in voting for another white man to rule over us, and we put that energy into, as the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, to pool our resources and unite and to do something for ourselves, to control, the politics within our own community, like they did in Black Wall Street. Speak a little bit to that, if you would.
A lot of Black people are giving up on politics as usual.
Good.
They realize that this is like we're peddling in place. We're literally, because it. I'm gonna say this. I'm kind of happy Trump won.
I'm gonna say I'm
I'm
standing
being so
behind you
deep
on
in
that.
this statement. I'm happy he won. I told people I'm happy he won because if the Democratic Party had won, our people would go right back to sleep. They would feel safe. They would feel cozy. They would feel that life is good for them. I don't
Especially
know
with a
right now.
Black woman
Yeah.
in office, they would have, they just like under Obama, which go right ahead. I'm not gonna say
So
anything more than
so
that.
now that Trump has won, everybody's paying attention because they're waiting to see what he's going to do. So CNN is covering him. People are watching online and watching to see what he's going to do. And so, but what happens when you're watching what he's going to do, you're going to make a decision about that. And then you're going to try to make a counter if you feel as though that particular thing doesn't have a benefit for you. So they're focused on the GOP, but really you're going to see America because it's unraveling right in front of your eyes. So
Mm.
you have to make a decision. Are you going to hang out with this thing that you can see unraveling? Or are you going to go somewhere and try to make sure that you and your family are going to be safe and your community are going to be safe? So had she won, they would have jumped back in the bed, pulled up the covers, and they would have been good because we good.
Hmm.
She's a sister. That's what they would have been thinking. But the policy is written before the person comes in. The people who direct policy in America, domestic policy, are the very, very wealthy. They're not going to do anything that upsets the very wealthy. And whatever they're going to do, like right now, they want to talk about the food stamps and all these things that they want to remove, but they already have a plan for the riots. They
They
taught
sure do.
us,
Say
they taught us
say
in
that.
political science 101. They said, we have a plan for the riots. You come out in the street and you want to fight, we'll send the police to hold it down for a minute while we call the National Guard. Now, it's against the law for them to bring the military boots on the ground, but they will do that if that's going to hold their society, which is crumbling, together. So we have to be wise and prepare for the fact that when things go left or right, whichever you want to call it, that we have the ability to survive and stay in our homes and wait till some of this stuff pass. Because you go
Absolutely.
out into the street, when they had that war, I think it was in the 90s in Yugoslavia, I think it was Kosovo,
Yeah.
Croatia, they were fighting. How many people got sniped going out to get a loaf of bread?
Hmm.
They would be going to get a loaf of bread, just trying to get something to hold their family down, and they didn't come back. So we have to prepare for what is going to happen. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us everything you see going on outside of the country is coming to America. So when that's
So
why I'm keeping
wait a
a
minute.
very
Say that again.
he said everything you see going on outside of this country,
Everything.
everything is coming to us. We are not going to escape because some of us thinking, oh, because there's food in the grocery store, this is America, land of the free, home of the slaves, that we're going to be good. But if we don't listen to the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, we will not survive. This is something that is, I mean, like I said, a perfect storm. We
Yes,
got
it is.
fires in California. How much produce did the fires burn? We got fires in the Carolinas. They're not talking about it as much, but there are fires in that area. There's storms all throughout the country, taking out all of the cattle and all of these things that we need to eat.
Hmm.
What happens when people who are used to eating 3 meals a day plus snacks have no food?
Say that.
And one of the blessings is that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us how to live a protracted amount of time without eating every 2 minutes.
That's right.
That is a survival thing. If all of these things we see are coming, because World War III trends on X all the time.
Hmm.
That trends impeach Trump, all of these things that you can see, if you can see them talking about it, thoughts are things.
Yeah, number of
So,
movies been made.
so thoughts are you thinking about it now, you're implementing it tomorrow. So we can see the country is unraveling, and they didn't take care of us when the country was intact.
Mm,
What do you think happens to the people when we are the, like say, when two elephants fight, the grass is what suffers?
right,
We are the grass.
man.
So we have to think about how are we going to live today? How are we going to ensure our future tomorrow? Because we know the last is going to be first, but we have to get there. How do
Mm,
we get to be first? There's some work that we have to do as people to ensure that we're here to be first. We
mhm.
just can't sit and cross our arms and say, "Oh, God got us. He gonna make sure we good." No, we are the gods, children of the Most High God. Get up and do something.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, all that you have said. I know that man, this is such a good conversation. I mean, because when you can conversate like this, then you know that you're talking to another conscious and aware person. Because some of our people, as you're saying, and I just wanted to go back to the music, right? That this music, we got to understand that this we're some of us are waiting for this physical war to take place, right? This physical confrontation. We're already under assault, brothers and sisters. We're under psychological warfare. Some
Mhm,
call it social engineering, some call it psyops, some call it mind manipulation, whatever you want to call it. We're already at war. And the enemy, he allows this type of what they call ratchet, right?
mhm,
Trail rap, you know what I'm saying? Thug, everything except for conscious,
mhm,
type of music. And we have to understand that this music is it's a tool of programming, right?
mhm,
Just like when we see and we look at television and we turn on these programs and we look at television, right?
mhm,
These programs. So when you listen to the music, think of it in that type of way. And then when you begin to think of it in that type of way, and you look into the future, what are they trying to program, let's say, our women to be? They're trying to program them to see their bodies as a way to make money.
mhm,
They're trying to program the black man, of course, to see his brother as an enemy.
mhm,
And that in order for him to survive, he needs to eliminate his enemy, but they're blinding us to who the real enemy is. But we're going to see it real soon, as things, as you say, and like I said in that book, The Inescapable Famine. One of the things that I talk about, have you ever seen like those commercials where the person is other than themselves and then they eat like whatever the candy bar
mhm.
is, right?
Yes,
And then they become themselves again.
yes.
There's a phrase called hangry, or hangry. I think that's hangry or hungry. Yeah,
Mhm,
hangry. So there's a chemical that's produced when we are hungry,
mhm,
and so when you look at most revolutions that have broken out all over the world, it always surrounded around food. When we
mhm.
looked at the Arab Spring, remember it was that young man who was trying to sell that produce who set himself on fire. But and then there's a saying that a hungry dog doesn't fear the stick. All right, the hungry dog doesn't fear the stick. So when this famine breaks out, and it will break out, because if they go to war, that will disrupt the supply chain, and the groceries that used to be delivered to your store. I'm telling you, man, this thing's gonna get bad. So let's go ahead and we'll begin to wrap it up. And once again, I want everyone to know that we're here with Sister Lorraine Muhammad, uh, who is a, let's see, a 27-year in the field of social service. So our
Action
sister
first.
knows what she's talking about. And this powerful book right here, we should definitely get this book, Black Integration. And I love the title, A Failed Social Experiment. Why did you call it a social experiment?
Because there's never been an experiment where the slave and the master were going to have social equality. I think we were
Mm,
supposed to be the first group. So really it was because even when previous generations, you just never had that. That's why when we're looking at scripture, God is always talking about separating us from the slave master because the slave master has the mentality of a slave master. And he's always going to work to make sure that you remain a slave. That's why even though we were freed under Emancipation Proclamation, they continuously set up policies and programs to ensure that we never really left and we always continued to be slaves. So
mm,
so now we have integration, but what have we gotten out of integration? We're still working for them. We're still enriching them. We play football, like you said. We're generating income for them. We're singing for them. And if you go abroad, they'll tell you, oh, they market your stuff all over the world. They're literally fear our departure because we will collapse their economy. If we stop drinking, smoking, and partying, just think about all the money they just lost. If we stop playing football, playing basketball, what's the March Madness? All of these things are generating income for them. They finally agreed to give the brothers a little money. But how many
yeah.
years these college brothers been playing college ball and not getting a dime? And you know most of them are not going to make it to the NBA. So you just got free labor for 4 years on a scholarship. And a lot of times the brothers come out and can't even use the degree because they're not necessarily attending classes.
I just wanted to go back and then we'll go ahead and wrap this up with separation. Let's get into that and we'll go ahead and wrap this on up. But I remember the most honorable Elijah Muhammad saying that integration was a hypocritical trick to
Mhm.
make us believe that our that's
Our
so crazy.
400-year-old enemy has now become our friend.
It's what what is it so difficult to understand about that, especially today? And I don't- so let's look at separation as an option, because as a people, one of the things that we have been, I think, programmed to avoid is the talk of separating. Oh, that separation has been associated with some type of supremacy, if you will,
Mhm.
or it has been associated with some type of rebellion. That slave that whether Brother Rizza talked about, I think it's called dreptomania. You know, something wrong with you Negroes. You want to separate.
Yeah.
So let's.
It was a mental illness when we wanted to be slaves. We no longer wanted to be slaves. We were mentally unfit.
And I think that is what most some of our people think about when you start talking about separation. So can you talk a little bit or start us off in this conversation and how we should view separation, and we'll go ahead and close it out with this conversation.
Anyone who wants to control their reality must control their reality. If you have another entity meddling into the affairs of your organization, your family, your group, who doesn't have the best interests of you in mind, they're going to oppress you. So as long as we remain here, we have these issues. We have the same issues that 60 years ago. We still have the high mortality rate. We still have so many unemployed Black people. We have so many, well, even worse on some instances with the single parent households. So all of these issues that we're trying to address, we can address with the people who are currently holding us as their captive. They benefit from our dysfunction.
Mm,
If we were to ever to
say
get
that again.
functional, then they couldn't continue to oppress and enslave us, and we would be able to establish a nation of our own without their meddling, without their interfering. That was one of the things that hurt them when we left the plantation and we started our own towns.
Come on.
They would come and look and get jealous and burn us out because why? They wanted us to return back to their control. So
Hmm.
when we talk about separation, we're talking land and sovereignty.
Right.
We don't have to be bothered with you, and you don't want to have to be bothered with us.
Hmm.
Total self-determination. We decide what's being taught in the schools. We will decide what's going to happen in the hospitals. We decide whether we're going to have natural medicine or this concoctions that they sell us now that have 15,000 side effects. All of the things that we need to address to benefit Black people has to be done separate from the people who don't like us.
That's right. That's right. And we're looking at these images of Black Wall Street. And I think that we should definitely understand, the history of these towns that we built up after slavery, like Black Wall Street and Rosewood and just a number of Black, towns that we built up, and we were independent, and all of them destroyed. Of course, we know Black Wall Street because they literally went in and massacred our brothers and sisters. So these people that we are looking at in this image right here,
Mm-hmm.
most of them were most likely shot down or burned up because Black Wall Street was also one of the first um, places where a bomb was
Mm-hmm.
dropped on a town or a city. We know Operation Move,
Yes.
Black people, they also dropped the bomb on them, blew up the whole
Yep.
block.
Yes.
So, it's just like conversations like this. We definitely need to start having in our community, and quickly, because
Mhm.
things are rapidly deteriorating. I mean, we just had where these uh, I don't know what you would call them, war generals or whatever, that they were on a social media app talking about talking about bombing the Houthis on a
Mhm.
social media app. So
Yes.
it's obvious that these people have just totally lost all decorum when it comes down to operating a civilized society.
Well, they
You
never
know,
had a civilized society. Somebody asked Gandhi, "What do you think about Western civilization?" He said that would be nice.
yeah, there you go.
They never were civilized, and so
So,
to us expect that they're going to be civilized when they know that they're losing.
and when we look throughout
And
history, Rome, you know, when we look throughout history, all of European societies have fallen this same way, and they keep this history not only from us, but they keep this history from themselves. When we
mhm.
talk about the not just the Romans, but when we talk about the what was those sailors? God, the Vandals. When we talk about the I can't think of them right now, but they look towards Thor and Odin and
Oh,
these type of gods of Olympus and so forth.
it was under the
Uh,
Greek.
but it's just a violent history. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that the Europeans had a 100-year war. He,
Yes.
he said they had a 50-year war.
Yes.
And we just came out of Afghanistan where it was a 20-year war. With,
Yes.
and it was all built on a lie.
Yes, sir.
And now we're looking at a modern day genocide
Mhm.
where we're, and this is the saddest part of all. This should let us know that if the white man will turn on his own children who only want an end to genocide and label them anti Semitic, brothers and sisters, what hope do we have in seeking justice from a system like this?
Well,
So, can you talk a little bit, and we'll close it out with what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad states as far as separation and what we are looking for coming from the white man. And if he don't give it, we know that it's going to come from God.
Well, we have to, in order for us to do what we need to do, in order for us to maintain ourselves as a nation, we must have land and sovereignty. Now, the minister said, and I'm thinking it was the 90s, he said, only 10% of us are going to come at a word. The other 90% had to be chastised. So while we're going through inevitable chastisement, and I think that our current president is probably part of that, we will stand up an exceedingly great army. But sometimes when you've been used to being comfortable, and that's what I used to tell my husband, I said, black people ain't gonna do nothing because they're too comfortable. But once the discomfort sets in, people that you would never think is coming through the mosque doors is coming through the mosque doors because they have to recognize, look, whatever I'm doing, it's not working. I'm gonna have to go somewhere. And so the exceedingly great army is coming. We just have to be patient with ourselves, patient with our people, because they're coming. There's no other place to go. And so the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us for how many years? And then the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan taught us for how many years? He's in 70 years now. So we 95 years in. And even though our people don't appear to be listening, that seed is in there. And when the winds blow, they're going to stand up an exceedingly great army. I trust Allah fully with that. But we just got to be prepared and know what we're going to do with all of that labor. What are we going? How are we going to use that labor properly to ensure our survival? What is our plan?
Mhm. Yes, thank you, sister. I really appreciate you coming on to this program to talk once again about this very, very important topic, and that is which way do you want to go, black man and woman? Do you want to still believe in the magic Dixie dust of integration, or do you want to look towards being an independent nation where you govern the affairs within your own community? You're raising your own food. You're teaching your own man. All this sounds beautiful. I just don't understand, But like you said, some of us are going to, we suffer from not just that Stockholm syndrome that you talked about, but there's also another syndrome. It's called learned helplessness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's where, for instance, I'll give two examples. One is the tethered elephant. They put this rope around this baby elephant's leg, and they tie it to just a stick in the ground, right? And it can't pull against that stick. So as it grows up, it learns that when it feels that resistance, that it just stops. It stops trying to pull. Another example was a flea, and they said that if you put a flea in a jar and it jumps and it keeps hitting that the top of that lid, you could take the lid off and the flea won't try to jump any higher than what it's used to, because it's always hit that ceiling, if you will. But brothers and sisters, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that the ceiling is being removed, and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, a divine guide and warner, has said that anything that we strive to do today, as long as it's within the restrictive laws, we are going to be successful. So, with that, sister, I really, really appreciate you coming on to the program. Are there any last words, and would you like to share with the people how they can contact yourself?
Thank you for letting me be on your program, Brother Stephen Muhammad. And I wanted to say pressure makes diamonds. And we have to remember that. So the pressure that we're about to go through will make diamonds.
Mm.
And so, like I said now, if my sister had won, we would have crawled back under the sheets. They would have thought they was good. But now that we have someone who we know doesn't have our best interest at heart. We're paying attention to him. And so that pressure that we're looking at going on and unraveling is going to create pressure on the brain. And then we're going to have to figure out what we're going to do with that pressure. And I believe pressure will make a diamond. But the book can be purchased on Amazon.com. And I also can be reached at X under Lorraine Muhammad. My website page is there. But thank you, brother.
Well, all right then. And we're going to go ahead and close this on out. I wrote another book. It's called Immunity Empowerment. And as you know, sister, you like you were saying, this depopulation that's taking place right now, I would advise everyone, of course, to get the book 1 and book 2 of How to Eat to Live. And then after you purchase that, you can purchase my book, Immunity Empowerment, because our immune system is more than just eating properly. We have to also think properly. We also have to surround ourselves with people who don't stress us out. And music. I mean, in this book, it just talks about all the different ways that our immune system can be attacked. And so we'll go ahead and close it on out with that little commercial that I put together for it. And once again, sister, Assalamu alaikum, Ramadan Mubarak, and happy Savior's Day.
And the same to you, brother. Thank you again.
Are you ready to take control? Are you ready to take control of your health and empower your immune system? Introducing Immunity Empowerment, a comprehensive guide to understanding and enhancing your immune system. For those looking for a holistic method to boost the immune system, Immunity Empowerment is the book for you. Learn how your immune system functions and discover the key to its strength and resilience. From the shadows of slavery to the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, explore the pre-existing conditions that have disproportionately affected the Black community, such as diabetes, hypertension, and obesity. Western medicine often takes a compartmentalized approach, where sometimes the cure can seem worse than the disease. Uncover the implications of Western medications and why they come with side effects. The hope is not lost. Meet the nutritional superheroes, foods, herbs, and vitamins like vitamin C, zinc, garlic, and antioxidants that can supercharge your immune system. Discover the science of fasting and its profound health benefits when done mindfully and safely. Breathing properly, such as diaphragmatic breathing, can have positive effects on your immune system and overall health. Never underestimate the power of a good night's rest. Sleep is crucial for your overall health and immune system. Understand the life-saving power of breastfeeding and its benefits for both mothers and children. Be aware of depopulation and immunity-weakening culprits. Learn about the foods that negatively affect your immune system. Sugar, the greatest drug on earth. Discover how it undermines your immune system. The mind-body connection is powerful. Positive thinking can boost your immunity, while negative thoughts can weaken it. Enhance your physical and mental resilience with regular physical activities like walking or yoga, and mental exercises like mindfulness and stress reduction. Never underestimate the power of prayer. It profoundly impacts your well-being by connecting mind, body, and spirit. Healthy relationships are key. Find resources aimed at improving health within the Black community. Escape media madness. Learn how media shapes young minds and how to protect them from harmful images and messages. Explore the impact of alpha waves and mood music on your health and well-being. Cultivate abundance by building your home garden for self-sufficiency and improved well-being. Discover alternative forms of building and maintaining health. Empower your immune system today. Get your copy of Immunity Empowerment and start your journey to better health. Available now, get the softback at Amazon or the ebook with hot links to references and resources at Amazon, Gumroad, and Patreon.
gotta have knowledge for life. You gotta have knowledge.